On Indigenous and Northern Affairs, we acknowledge we meet on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe peoples. Pursuant to standing orders, existing standing orders, we're in a hybrid format today. We have one witness in this panel who's online?
That's correct.
Okay. So we're going to have two panels today, and are we going to see our, is it Mr. Buffalo?
Mr. Buffalo, yes. You can ask him to turn his video.
Okay, Mr. Buffalo, we're started. If you want to turn your video on, we want to make sure that your technology is working. Perfect. Good to see you. Welcome. For you specifically, Mr. Buffalo, because the others are in the room here, you're able to choose the language on your screen. There's either floor, which is whatever language is being used, English or French, so we want to get that set. We can't mute you, so you'll need to mute and unmute yourself. So when it's your turn to speak, we'll get you to do that. Now that we've started, there's no photos or screenshots allowed, and I think we're good to go with that. So I'd like to welcome Mr. Buffalo, Stephen Buffalo of the Indian Resource Council. Welcome. I have Amanda Simon and Albert Marshall of the National Aboriginal Land Managers Association. So welcome to you, and that'll be our first panel. We'll have about an hour, so we'll go till about 6:05 or so. And I always like to start with our online guest, just while we have the technology working. It's good to start with you. But I'll also mention, I'll keep track of time. You'll have 5 minutes for opening statements. When you're 30 minutes from the end of the time, I'll give you the yellow card, so start getting ready to wind up. And when you reach the end of your allotted time, I'll give the red card. And don't stop mid-sentence, but wind up your thoughts, and we'll get on to the next person in the next round of questions. So with that, I think we have all our regular members except for Chandra, Mr. Arya. Welcome to our committee today. And Mr. Buffalo, over to you. I'll put 5 minutes on the clock, and we're ready to go whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I want to first acknowledge that I'm in the Treaty 7 territory here in Calgary. I want to thank the Chair and Committee member for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Stephen Buffalo. I'm the President and CEO of the Indian Resource Council of Canada. Our organization represents over 130 First Nations who have produced or have direct interest in the oil and gas industry. Our mandate is to advocate for federal policies that will improve and increase resource development opportunities for First Nations. Although our main focus is oil and gas, many of our members are engaged in solar, wind projects, transmission line, carbon capture, and starting to look at equity opportunities in nuclear reactors and SMRs. I'm sure the members of the committee know that First Nations have historically been excluded from economic opportunities in this country. We have a little say about the activities taking place on our lands, and even as they diminish our Aboriginal and treaty rights. We want to resuscitate our economies, and land, of course, is quid pro quo for economic development. Our reserve population is growing, the fastest growing population in Canada, but our lands are not growing. In fact, they are shrinking, especially our traditional lands. So this committee hearing is very important and very timely. I know other presenters have spoken about legal basis for land restitution to our communities along with our treaties. And most recently, UNDRIP and recommendations from the Truth and Reconciliation recommendations. We have made our case for land restitution time and time again, and Canadian law is on our side. The problem is that the enforcement system is broken. Best efforts relating to the additions to reserve, the ATR policy, the treaty land entitlement, and the modern treaties, especially in BC, are well intended, but the process is lengthy and very expensive. For me, land restitution is a continuum. It should not be one size fits all. We have our reserve lands, which are shrinking by the day. The increase for demand for housing, infrastructure, and development. There are many outstanding cases to add reserve lands and or compensation based on what was agreed in the treaties. This process must be concluded in a timely manner. We also need to protect the little of what we have left. So land stewardship is very important to us. This is why we were very proactive in the site reclamation, site rehabilitation program. we were able to secure a portion of the $1 billion federal grant specifically to abandon depleted wells on our lands. To date, First Nations have cleaned over 2,000 wells, and there are many more to go, especially with orphan wells that do not have any owners. Critics claim that the responsibility is to the owners based on polluter pay principle. But this is a ticking bomb. We can't wait for the polluters to do the right thing. Our people need their lands restored as soon as possible. In my own community of Musquecheese, we have old pipelines crisscrossing our lands, and we cannot build houses in these areas. So pipelines must be removed. Our elders have told us this much. We need the resources to finish this work. We have a fiduciary trustee by the name of Indian Oil and Gas Canada, which is a special operating agency under Indigenous Services Canada. And they were supposed to protect our reserve lands. Unfortunately, they have failed miserably in this regard. They were nowhere to be seen when we lobbied hard for the site rehabilitation program. They did not even have the data on these wells. We had to invest some money to get our own, working closely with data providers such as Asset Book and GeoScout. Now we know where the wells are and which ones need to be addressed. Further, Indian Oil and Gas has failed to hold lessees accountable for their liabilities. It seems they protect industry more than First Nations. So currently we are working hard to transform Indian Oil and Gas Canada into a First Nations-led regulator. There are many initiatives currently in place where Indigenous people have partnerships, equity, participation in industry on these lands, and which we applaud, but there's a lot of more work that needs to be done. I want to mention and commend the government of Alberta for the Indigenous Opportunities Corporation, where First Nations have participation in the projects in their traditional area. And I want to end by mentioning that our issue to resource revenue sharing is unfinished business. Our organization is lobbying hard to put this matter on the table. For me, resource revenue sharing and land restitution go hand in hand. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for those opening comments, and you're right on the 5-minute mark, so well done. We appreciate it. Now we have Ms. Simon and Mr. Marshall. I believe, Ms. Simon, you're going to offer the opening comments?
Yes.
When you're
hello.
ready, you'll have 5 minutes, so the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Sego Sawagwego. Hello, everyone, and bonjour à tous. Thank you, Chair. I want to begin by honoring and acknowledging the ancestral unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory by offering our sacred medicines. I want to thank the Standing Committee for the invitation to speak today on behalf of NELMA. We have had the opportunity to present several times in the past. We look upon this opportunity to promote awareness of raising professional capacity in First Nation and Inuit lands management, as well as to draw attention to the need for land restitution for the original inhabitants of this beautiful and wealthy country we call Canada. My name is Amanda Simon, Chair for NELMA and Lands Manager for the Mohawks of Gunnesadauga in the province of Quebec. Joining me here today is Albert Marshall Jr., Land Manager from Eskazoni, Nova Scotia, and Board Director. NELMA was officially formed in 2000 as a not-for-profit, non-political organization. NELMA is a technical organization driven by First Nation land management professionals. We have a corporate membership representing 8 regional lands associations across Canada. We have a membership of 236 First Nations and Inuit communities at large. Our association comprises of 8 regional lands associations: Atlantic, Quebec and Labrador, Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia, and Nunavut. We are pleased to say that we are in discussions with land management professionals in the Yukon and Northwest Territories, canvassing their interest in establishing a regional lands association and becoming members of NELMA. Our members operate under various land regimes, namely managing land under the Indian Act, Reserve Land and Environmental Management Program, RLEMP. Secondly, the Framework Agreement, sectoral self-government, and thirdly, self-government, full control and management of lands. It is interesting to note that specifically to our membership, they manage well over 1 million hectares of reserve lands, and with the ongoing initiatives of additions to reserves, treaty land entitlement, and specific claims, we expect this number to increase in the coming years. Since April 2000, NALMA has made progress in providing opportunities for First Nations to build capacity in First Nation lands governance and management across Canada. NALMA's mandate is to provide First Nation and Inuit land management professionals and other stakeholders with professional development, networking, and technical support opportunities. I want to thank Indigenous Services Canada for their outstanding partnership and financial support over the past 23 years. We have made significant progress in raising professional standards and capacity in land management. We have established a professional land management program which certified 225 land managers in First Nations across Canada. We deliver specialized training to 500 land management professionals annually. We developed 30 land management course modules and toolkits and established survey, land use planning, ATR, environmental units. We undertook the Centre of Excellence for Matrimonial Real Property and were very instrumental in helping in the establishment of the Indigenous Centre for Cumulative Effects. I am sure during the process of this study, political views, court cases, and studies highlighted the unfairness, the desecration of Indigenous rights concerning land and land ownership. We believe that restitution of land means transferring jurisdictional laws, rights, and wealth. It is essential because it supports sovereignty, prosperity, opportunity, good health, and well-being. In this regard, how can Indigenous people in Canada reclaim their land through restitution of lands? My message to you today is from the grassroots, from an on-the-ground perspective. Land managers and communities have the challenging task of carrying out and upholding the expectations of community members and leadership. We must understand and implement processes and procedures in the land regimes we operate, the Indian Act, FNLMA, and self-government. Technically speaking, giving land back could be a challenging initiative for the federal government. However, it does not have to be if they commit to upholding their constitutional mandate to support Indigenous communities in prosperity, opportunity, good health, and well-being. In conclusion, NALMA is a First Nation-driven professional land management organization working towards improving professional capacity and ensuring quality land management to promote sustainable growth and prosperity within communities. Through NALMA's experience, working directly in communities, our thoughts of restitution of land can be simplified by the federal, provincial, municipal, and First Nations governments building a solid and productive relationship with commitment to work together to share in the benefits of prosperity, opportunity, good health, and well-being. Nyawa, thank you, and merci for this opportunity to participate.
Thank you so much for your opening comments. We're ready to get right into our round of questions. So first up, we have Mr. Vidal, who has 6 minutes. Whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all of our witnesses today for your opening comments. Mr. Buffalo, I'm going to start with you. You talked about economic opportunities being a very important part of the work you do, and I know that's part or a big part of what your organization does. It's no secret in Canada that Indigenous people face many challenges in healthcare and housing, education. You actually talked about that in your comments. And, you know, I believe that economic opportunities are going to be a real huge part of solving some of the challenges that are faced by many of the communities in those areas that I listed. So can you just speak a little bit more about how the restitution of land and the associated economic opportunities that come with that can be directly linked to solving some of the healthcare, housing, education, and some of the other challenges that are faced by communities across the country?
Yes, thank you for your question. And of course, you know, as we look at the land bases that are now set through the Indian Act, you know, there's opportunities in business development and primarily resource extraction that is just happening just off our communities. And as long as we're a part of it, I think there's an opportunity to really to start looking at investing in some of the social issues that are plaguing our communities. And the hard part is, you know, under the Indian Act, And then I think that's the primary barrier, is getting around the Indian Act and what we're told to do and what we're not told to do. But, you know, like here in the province of Alberta, we have the Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation, which, you know, gives the First Nation an opportunity to participate in the natural resource sector of business deals that are happening within their territory. And you know, that's money that a community can now invest in these areas. And it's our land base might not grow, but at least we can start addressing some of these issues where bureaucrats from Indigenous Services Canada is telling us how not to spend and how to spend money. You know, this is at our discretion, you know, and I think that's the first step in really trying to be proactive in these areas. You know, as long as we keep depending on the federal government under the Indian Act, we're not going to get anywhere. So, you know, identifying the land cases, and really it's up to the First Nation to assert their own jurisdiction, create their own land laws and everything like that. And in the oil and gas sector, we have Indian Oil and Gas Canada, which is a horrible regulator. They cause more problems than anything. And I don't know, you can ask the Privy Council how many litigations are against Indian Oil and Gas Canada against their failure to act. But we assert our own jurisdiction. I think we can start taking care of ourselves and really be progressive in that way to take care of those social issues.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You talked in your answer, you also talked about in your opening comments about the Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corp. Saskatchewan has actually recently set up the same kind of an organization. I don't remember the exact acronym, but it's very, very similar to the Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corp. Something we've talked about for a couple of years is maybe what the benefit of a similar type organization would be on the federal level. Would you mind just maybe speaking to that for a second, and what you think the benefit might be of having a national Indigenous Opportunities Corp?
Yes, for sure. You know, of course, you know, the AIOC primary mandate was to backstop with a Alberta or provincial government guarantee on First Nations investing in some of these projects that are in their territory. And again, it's not cash, it's a backstop. So there's still some lending, there's some liability there, but now you're part of the equation, more or less, and you're going to see revenues once the project is full, active, and running. From a federal level, that would be imperative. You know, we're talking about critical minerals that we need for this to try to get to net zero. A lot of that is mining, but mining these critical minerals, and you know, we see the resources and we see what kind of I guess revenues the provinces are seeing, you know, to do that. But you know, at the federal level, it'll definitely help First Nations not be so dependent on what is coming through their comprehensive funding agreement under the Indian Act.
Thank you. My time is getting short, and I want to ask you one more quick question. With the time you have left, which is about a minute, you talked about the lengthy processes around ATRs and other kind of claim settlements and some of those challenges. And I mean, I grasp very clearly where you're coming from. Can you just flesh out a little bit in about a minute the frustrations and the limitations or hindrance that those long claim processes are to achieving some of the goals that you've set out?
Yeah, you know, there's bureaucrats in under this Land Management Act or something that really hold back the process. And of course, the only ones that are really benefiting are somewhat, I guess to just say it, the lawyers see a lot of benefit to this, and it is painstakingly long. You know, some communities have invested in land through TLE, and they have an opportunity to create some sort of commercial development to see some revenues within their corporations that they may develop. But it's really imperative that they move things along, and it's just painstakingly long. And by the time things are done, you know, a lot of money has been lost, and it's just so slow. That's the only thing.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And we're out of time. We're going to go now to Mr. Batiste. And before we turn it over to you, Mr. Batiste, I neglected to welcome Mr. Dreeshen. You're such a familiar face, Earl. I just accepted you as one of our committee. So good to see you here. Mr. Batiste, you have 6 minutes.
Gwe, Madeleine, wala and Albert on Delpit Gwewiek. Just telling Albert as a Mi'kmaq speaker, welcome to this committee. Thank him for being here. I'm really glad to hear about the presentation. I'm wondering, Albert, if you could start off by describing the challenges on reserve in acquiring land. Do you think that there's adequate land available in many of the reserves across Canada for the housing needs that our community is dealing with?
Not in our region, because take Eskasoni for instance. We have 5,000 members with 800-900 acres to deal with. And out of that 800-900 acres, we only could use 13% of it, which is basically the rest of it's all bogs, swamps, and steep hills. Practically unfeasible to build with. And acquiring land, it's different in the Atlantic region where we got to purchase our own land. We don't have any TLE process or specific claims that we're going through. So every land that we get in Atlantic Canada, it's either bought or is donated by some kind individuals. And again, like the chief said, that it's a lengthy process for the ATR process. And there has to be more of them. It's unfortunate that our lands were not, our projected population base wasn't properly formulated when they created reserves in Atlantic Canada, more specifically.
Albert, I'm wondering if you can speak to, I know specifically it's impacted the community of Eskasoni and Sibonagady, the centralization of the Mi'kmaq in 1940s. If you could just give a little bit of explanation as to what that policy was and what is the impact on it today for the Mi'kmaq of those communities.
Well, it was centralization in Nova Scotia back in the 50s. And basically, individuals were ordered to leave their communities, surrounding areas, forcefully, in most cases violently. So everybody moved either to Sibonagady or to Eskasoni, which were basically members from other communities living in one community. And it ended up being very intense. It even happens today. If somebody moves into their community, they assume that they're not from the community. It created the government tried to create unity with reservations, but it technically created separations.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, Albert. Do you think the centralization has impacted our community in terms of the population's growth of communities like Sibonagady and Eskasoni that are running out of land because of the population which was forced into those communities? Can you tell us how it's impacting Eskasoni today in terms of the availability of land for housing?
Of course, it hinders a lot of communities in Eskasoni from families from growing, because we don't have any more land base to put anybody else in. And then I feel bad for people today that they have money, but they have no land to build with. Mm-hmm. And as a land manager, I don't want to send them anywhere else, because we were forced on reserves into these camps. Now we have to live in them at the best of our advantage. Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, we hear about the treaties and all across Canada. To the best of your knowledge, did the Mi'kmaq treaties, the peace and friendship treaties, ever cede any land in those treaties that were signed between 1725 and 1786?
No, Mi'kmaq never ceded any land to the government. It was just friendship, peace and friendship treaties.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Simon, do you want to add anything that gives a little bit of context on the difficulties for acquiring land and for homes around First Nations all across Canada?
acquiring land, I think, is a very difficult process across the country, regardless of what province you come from. Our territorial lands are taken over constantly. So when we go through either a process of ATR, which again is arduous and a lengthy process, although we're striving to make that process a little bit easier, it's very difficult for First Nations across this country to buy land, and if they do buy the land, they now have to go through the process of adding it to their reserve through this ATR process. The issue there is there's not enough capacity for the First Nations when it comes to the ATR process. It's a process that can take between 3 years on a good day and 10 to 15 years on a bad day. So during that time, what do you think happens to the land that was purchased? You know, it can go through many issues. So it's all good and fine to buy that land, but then the process to add it to your reserve and do something with it is almost impossible. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We're going to go now to Madame Gill. Vous avez 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your appearance, Mr. Buffalo, as well as Mr. Marshall, Ms. Simon. It's very interesting. In fact, I was going to go in the same vein as Mr. Baptiste. You talked about difficulties many times. You said regardless of where we are in the territory, we have the same difficulties. I imagine there are distinctions depending on the territory. You're Mohawk. I know there are particularities there, especially since you are across a border. I would have liked to hear you about those particular difficulties and name some. And what would your recommendations be about that? You said times always plays against it, but if you have many different problems, maybe you could educate the committee and we could put that in our report. Thank you.
I should have gone into French, but I apologize. I'm way too nervous, and I'm sure I'll stumble all over the place. So again, land and getting land back is very difficult. I mean, Ganasdaga being one of them after the events of 1990, we were a very well-publicized First Nation that did get land back. However, after 30 years, we're still in a process of adding that land through a proper land allotment process for us to properly use those lands. So it's a long time. So here is a reality, 30 years. And I'm living proof to tell you that that is a reality on the ground. And what makes it a little bit more interesting for Ganasdaga is we're not a reserve under the definition of the Indian Act. We're a territory. Therefore, we had to have special legislation issued for us in order to apply some of the rules and regulations getting us out of the Indian Act. So that said, our process is not any different than the ATR process. It's mirrored. But I would like to say that from a NALMA perspective, and as chair for NALMA, representing NALMA here today, we created an ATR unit to help with the capacity for First Nations to be able to work through this arduous process and to find recommendations for the governments, all levels of government, okay, provincial, municipal, and the feds, where we can diminish that time limit, where we can also have this distinct understanding of the First Nation perspective when we're going through these processes. And I think if we all collaborate cooperatively, I think we can diminish those timelines while respecting all of the guidelines that are within the process to come to a successful and prosperous eventual process that First Nations can use this land that was taken from them for so many years and hopefully establish new homes, hopefully be able to have economic development and live prosperously. Thank you for your question.
Merci. J'aurais aimé peut-être que vous puissiez
Thank you. I would have liked you to go further and tell us about the impact. We're talking about 30 years. That's huge. That's half a life, nearly. It's a generation. There are impacts. Maybe we can't always see that directly. Maybe it's indirect. or direct and very visible or indirect. I'd like to know why it takes so long before land can be acquired or restituted.
To what happened in Ganasadaga because it's very close to me. When the events after 90 happened and the land purchases began with the federal government, the 30 years resulted in Ganasadaga having their land there, but with no land allotment process. These lands were simply taken. These lands were we didn't have a land use plan to properly plan out a structured area where we could have social gatherings. Our schools would be protected, so on and so forth. And ultimately, unfortunately, what happened as well is we have environmental concerns because there was a dump that was created afterwards. So the result is huge. The impact is huge. These lands, some of them became unusable because they now have to be remediated because of the environmental impacts that have happened because of this time that went by. 30 years is a long time. We could have done a lot more, and I think that having a cooperative strategy with Indigenous Services Canada could probably support us, and to not have this happen in other First Nations. We're trying to fix that now through the RSD table, and we're hoping that, we're going to become somewhere where we can have a land allotment process, where we can address those environmental concerns and have those lands usable again for the Mohawks of Ganasadaga. Yeah, thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Now we have Madame Nidlut. The floor is yours for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My first question is going to Stefan, and I want to welcome them as well. And what we're hearing from you is very good to hear. I will ask you later. I have two questions for Stefan. The first one pertains to what you stated about Indian and Oil Canada. They have been many conflicts that arose between these entities. Can you describe in detail what the problems are caused by Indian and Oil Canada? And the second question is, do you have recommendations regarding Indian and Oil Canada?
Thank you for the question. First off, Indian Oil and Gas Canada is our regulatory body. We're different. It's different from the Alberta Energy Regulator and the Canadian Energy Regulator. And they were supposed to be our fiduciary trustee as well. Some of the problems that have stemmed from their lack of enforcement has really turned into litigation against the Crown. And First Nations, we struggled through this because, one, we had to learn this oil and gas sector really fast. And when oil and gas is happening and our province is making billions of dollars, First Nations had the opportunity to take advantage of it. And of course, federal money is not enough to service our communities. We all know that. So our founding fathers learned the hard way. They really set up an opportunity for First Nations to be part of this sector and to benefit as well, not only through royalties, but through jobs and services. And it has been very successful, despite some of the social pathologies that comes with having too much money. But at the end of the day, the regulatory body did not service us well. We have orphaned and abandoned wells, where IOGC did not keep companies accountable. We have miscalculation of oil and gas royalties, which are held in Ottawa and are being disputed. They seem to, if you more or less, we deal with regulators that are, and individuals that are paternalistic and pose a lot of systematic racism, not only internally, but to our community leaders. They They're very difficult to deal with. And you know, for example, with the site reclamation program that had been initiated, they had no data on any of the oil and gas wells on our communities as to what is abandoned and orphaned and active. So, you know, it's just, in my view, it's a special operating agency for people that want a government pension. And they do their time there and they don't act in our best interest. Some of the suggestions, and it's been mandated since 1996, is having a First Nation-led energy regulator. So we're back in the red zone, so to speak, lack of a better term, of really trying to find a way to change that system. And IRC will not decide for First Nation on how they want to regulate their lands, but we're at that point where we have to ask those questions, where First Nations have to make a decision and assert their jurisdiction, not only on their land, community lands, but in their traditional territories of Treaty 6, 7, and 8 here in Alberta and Saskatchewan, and Treaty 4. You know, they have to start making land laws for themselves and work with industry and work with the provincial government, because if you do it federally, it is proven here that it fails. So, you know, progression going forward is First Nations to really assert their own jurisdiction with their land laws. And my hope is that it leads to a better system where resource revenue sharing is on the forefront and on the table for all First Nations. With the extraction of natural resources in this country, we are rich in natural resources. You know, First Nations should have a better say on part of it, because depending on Indian Affairs money through the Comprehensive Funding Agreement is never enough. And, you know, to the question of before, you know, we don't have the resources to move things along. Some of us don't have the money, and it's really hard. So if we obtain land through a purchase and to have it added to our reserve, you know, there's no money there to really help us move it forward, move it quickly. You know, the bureaucrats, if a minister decides that this is going to be reserve land, the bureaucrats in the system really hold up the whole process. And it just takes one person to not agree with the mandate moving it forward. It's really tough and difficult. So to move things quicker, you know, maybe we don't get that type of the government involved with the internals of Indigenous Services Canada. But ultimately, we're at that point where we have to find different ways to not depend on the government for our success and for our prosperity and to get out of poverty. That's my mandate, is to get a lot of our communities out of poverty, because natural resources are abundant and around us. We have to do a better job. And it's absolutely work with both governments, federal, provincially, and with industry. Thank you.
You have 10 seconds left. Okay. Okay, we're going to go to our next round, which will be 5 minutes. And first up, I have Mr. Schmale.
Thank you. I was setting my timer. Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you to our witnesses, especially my geographical neighbors here from Curve Lake. Thank you very much for attending. Maybe we'll start with you. During our study on this topic and many, many others, we come to hear the same thing over and over again about the slowness within the department, particularly the bureaucracy. In our study for the non-insured health benefits, we heard that applications for claims are still done by fax machine, something I bring up many times. Now, I'm just confirming that any application you make to the department, you're not using a fax machine, correct? Okay, but that's very important to know, because you could say yes, and it wouldn't surprise me. Given the fact that I think we're hitting 10,000 bureaucrats within the ISC department now, and you're saying a application could take up to 30 years, and I appreciate what Mr. Buffalo just said a second ago. Where do you think the logjam is? Like, what is taking so long?
I got some examples.
Yeah, I'm sure
Please,
he has
yes,
some
so
examples.
take some examples, yes.
For me, in Ganasdaga, you have to understand that we did not go through the ATR process, so I need to be clear on that. Following the events of 90, we didn't have to go through the ATR process. We just have to turn around and put together a land allotment process. But to speak to the ATR process, what's the holdup? I think it's the idea that there's not enough capacity both with the federal government and the First Nation, and of course, the levels of governments, the provincial government and the municipal government. All of them have to be involved, and they don't have enough capacity. They don't know enough about it, quite simply. And that's where NALMA comes in, trying to offer this capacity in a way that is easy to understand, and having professionals there who can help out all levels of government and the First Nation mostly, so that the process can move forward a lot easier. Thank you.
Ms. Simon.
Yeah, I got one example. There's a reserve in my community, Bear River, in our province, Nova Scotia. They had a 30-year ATR file open, and the reason why it was extended again, the province reissued mining permits to companies on the proposed ATR. So there's no collaboration between, like Amanda just mentioned, between the province, the municipality, and the feds. It seems like it's more the First Nation and the feds and the province, somewhat.
Do you see maybe even within the departments, like turnover a problem too? Like someone might leave, okay, so they get accustomed to the file, then they're out, then you're starting something. Okay, that seems to be an issue
that's the big thing too. That's the big thing within the department. It's a huge turnaround.
So having, I appreciate your knowledge on this too. I think that's a key point of what you two are doing. Having, I don't know how you, like a designated person or maybe some background or experience to help out with that as in a more stable position. I know people are free to move, but at the same time, this is hindering the process, I think. I guess institutional knowledge, I guess, I don't know what
I think it's more to this level. I think this is where the problem is, where we just mentioned there, where the turnaround of staff repeatedly. And then you got to re-educate everybody again.
Yeah,
like
you start from scratch.
Yeah.
Did you want to quickly chime in? I saw you reaching for the microphone, Ms. Simon.
Obviously, the federal government has a lot of turnaround, but I think if they were able to implement a way to transfer that knowledge in a quicker fashion, that turnaround can still happen. However, that transfer of knowledge, which is essential to moving these ATR processes forward, can happen. I'm sure that there's a way that this transfer of knowledge can happen.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Buffalo, I have about 30 seconds. Did you want to comment on any of that? I know I had a whole bunch of other questions for you, but
Yeah, for sure, I agree 100%. Municipalities, the province, no one's on the same page. Again, we lack the resources to kind of get these together, and we're always waiting for someone to step forward. There's a lot of corporate and value to lands that we obtain, but to have them access through the process of ATR, and then again, the bureaucracy is unbelievable. I've gone through 4 ADMs in my capacity in the time I've been with the Indian Resource Council. So that needs to kind of, I don't know what to do there. Thank you.
Okay, that's the end of that round. We go to that 5 minutes. We go to Mr. Pawlowski next for 5 minutes.
Hello. So my riding's Thunder Bay Rainy River. So there's Fort William First Nations, which is Robinson Superior Treaty, and then on the west side, they're all Treaty 3. So some of the communities are doing economically fairly well. Some of them have had recent flood and land settlement agreements, so gotten a fair bit of money. Now, if they want to add land, they have to go through the ATR process, right? And the ATR is add to reserves. Now, is there a question, like when you're adding land, whether you do it formally adding to the reserve, because the reserve land is still held in trust by the Crown, right? And so you don't actually have the fee simple ownership of the land. So now, and I don't know if I've got this right, but is it possible, and isn't it an alternative that the band can set up a corporation and then and then the corporation own the land so that you actually own the fee simple? Or how does that work in terms of the technicalities, and what have different First Nations done in terms of like how do they add by formally adding to the reserve? And if you add to the reserve, then you have to, does that require an act of government to formally add to the reserve? But maybe you could walk us through some of that technical aspect, because I'm still trying to comprehend how you do this.
First Nations don't necessarily have to do the process of addition to reserve, but often they take that route because they lack the land base. They need to provide housing for their First Nations, and they need to provide economic development for their First Nations. Those First Nations, and I give you an example of a First Nation who opts to have fee simple land under their ownership, and yes, through an organization, so they can hold this fee simple land. And it's been very important to people in BC, for First Nations in BC actually, who in fact opt to have a corporation and have their fee simple land, because it offers them a financial edge. Okay, they can now turn around and be able to borrow money based on their fee simple lands, because as many of you know here, reserve lands are, you cannot put it up for collateral, and therefore you have very limited opportunities financially and economically. So you're not forced to do an ATR process, but oftentimes the First Nation is, because of their current situation on the ground, grassroots. Those First Nations with more resources, like in BC, have that opportunity to take that, to opt into saying, I'll open a corporation and I'll have fee simple lands, because I can probably turn around and generate a very big income by doing that.
So I would take it then, if you get the fee, form a corporation and get the fee simple, then that's a much faster process than the add to reserves process.
Absolutely. It absolutely is. In the ATR process, there's three main components, and there's three phases to the ATR process. It would be nice at some point if Indigenous Services Canada, within those processes or those phases, would allow a little bit more flexibility from one phase to the other, and it would speed up the process and still answer all of the requirements within the process.
So the only thing stopping First Nations communities from going the corporation route, fee simple route, is lack of funds, and people are forced into the ATR process because they don't have the money to go the much faster route.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, that's the reality across the country. And that's why NELMA is actually striving really hard. And that's the reason why they actually opened up an ATR unit to help build capacity in this way, and to work cooperatively with Indigenous Services Canada to improve the entire process.
Now, are there advantages to the ATR? Because if you add to the reserve, then you get the benefits of not paying tax, for example, right? So how important is that, and how attractive is that? How much does that influence First Nations community decision as to go through the ATR or through a corporation? Or is the tax benefits minimal compared to the headache of having to go through the process?
I think when a First Nation decides to go through the ATR process, they're very well aware of the decision that they make. One of the first things that they have to do is submit a BCR to the department, whereby the leadership of that First Nation has made their decision. So obviously they've made that decision because they feel that they have to. Oftentimes the whole idea of taxation really doesn't hit the ground running for First Nations. Unfortunately, it's always about being able to have more land so that our First Nation people, our membership at large, can live and prosper, and quite simply just have a place to build homes and some kind of infrastructure. That's the reality on the ground.
Okay, thank you. We're out of time. And now we'll go to Madame Bérubé. Bienvenue. Et vous avez 5 minutes.
Ms. Bérubé, welcome. My question will be for Ms. Simon, Mr. Marshall. How should the restitution of land happen? You said things took a long time, but there's been a lot of change in government. How do you see this happening, and what does that mean exactly for you?
No, I'm sorry, but the translation didn't go very well. My apologies to have you repeat.
Should I repeat the question?
My apologies.
You explained earlier that it was very slow from the government's side. There was no process to support you and to respond to you in the Canadian government. So I'd like to know, how should the restitution of land happen, and what does this mean to you?
Process is a lengthy process, but I think that the restitution of land is a cooperative engagement between the First Nation, the federal government, the provincial government, and the municipality. And I think if everybody has this willingness to work together, the restitution of land can be a prosperous and healthy and wealthy process if we were all to work together. But unfortunately, we haven't seen that in the past. Unfortunately, these processes have been marred with stoppages and bureaucratic difficulties. So I think if everybody understood their role and responsibility in what does restitution of land mean to a First Nation, I think the entire process and the entire idea of restitution of land can be a very good one if we all put our heads together and we're on the same page about what restitution means to everybody.
What impact did this restitution of land have on First Nations, be it physical health, mental health, for the Indigenous population?
The impacts are huge, as you well know. You see the news. You see the various First Nations across the country that are seeing these impacts in terms of their health, their well-being, what it does to that First Nation having to live these kind of circumstances. So when we talk about restitution of land, I think First Nations, number one, get excited, and then at the same time, question their capacity of moving forward in terms of how can I move forward with this? And then the impacts to them is always huge, because oftentimes we have to go and seek guidance through consultants, seek other avenues to help us through these constraints. And it all has a health impact on the First Nations, the leadership within communities.
You know what, I made a mistake, and I apologize. You should have only had 2.5 minutes, and I gave it 5, so we're at the end of the time now. So you got a little bonus time there. And Lori, we'll go to you now for your 2.5 minutes.
I hope I get bonus time.
We'll go to you for your 3 minutes in a little bit.
So my question is to Amanda. I am very touched by the fact that you're from Kanesatake. I've worked with people like Ellen Gabriel, who is an amazing advocate. And I've heard from others in your community what the challenges are, even when there's been acknowledgement that First Nations, Métis, or Inuit have obtained the self-governance necessary to lead their own communities. Part of it is that law enforcement, provincial law enforcement, doesn't recognize their authority to have their bylaws enforced. And I wonder if you could speak to that. I think that it's quite important in terms of land back, that we're not just talking about economic development, that we're not just talking about alleviating poverty, but that we're allowing actual self-governance to be realized and having law enforcement respect the bylaws that have been made, so that Indigenous governance that was to be respected is being implemented.
Thanks. Yeah, I guess, through your relationship with Ellen Gabriel, she's obviously told you some of the issues that Ganasdaga face. We are under a sectoral self-government regime. However, through the years, failed to do some of the things that we were supposed to do in terms of creating our justice of the peace, for example, which would address the policing issue. And you're absolutely right when you state the fact that when you get land back, you may have it back, it's there. But if you do not have the proper measures in place when we speak to justice and proper policing, chaos is the result. And you can just, look at the news sometimes and see what's happening in Ganasdaga to understand what I mean by that chaos. And it's the lack of leadership, perhaps a partnership with Indigenous Services Canada to help resolve and remedy this issue. Following 90, everybody has to understand that the relationship with the Sûreté du Québec was not a good one. Okay, we lost a Corporal Lemay. And so we need to really find different ways, unique ways to address that whole policing issue.
Okay, just very quickly, would you say that the Indigenous Services Canada is still taking too much of a colonial approach to making sure that Indigenous people's rights are being respected in terms of land back?
Absolutely is my one-word answer to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that takes us to the end of this panel. I'd like to thank all of our witnesses for joining us today, including Mr. Buffalo online, and for our two witnesses here, Ms. Simon, Mr. Marshall. Really appreciate you making time. Colleagues, we're going to suspend now. We have the second panel to bring in. We'll take a few minutes to get set up, and then we'll get underway for the second panel. So meeting suspended. Into our second session. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Chief Louis, welcome. Being you're the only one online, you'll have to control the language choice here. So on your screen, you should have floor, English, or French. So you want to make sure you choose whichever one you want, because we'll have live translation going today. And I can't control it for you, so I'll need you to get just select that. And then we'll need you to mute yourself when you're not speaking and then unmute yourself. So again, we can't control that remotely. It's easier if you do it, but anybody in the room, it's all controlled for us. Now that we've started, there's no pictures taken or screenshots allowed. And we're going to go through some rounds of questions. We'll start with opening statements. I use a card system when I give you the yellow card. There's 30 seconds left. The red card, the time's up, but just finish your thought. Don't stop mid-sentence. And let's have a good conversation here. We have Chief Byron Louis from the Okanagan Indian Band as our online guest today. We have Patricia Mitchell, Executive Director for Manitoba Husky. I got that right. We just talked about it. And Shadi Al-Hafez, Research Fellow, Yellowhead Institute. So welcome to the three of you. And I'll go to you, Chief Louis, first, because you're online, and while we have a good connection, we're going to turn it over to you. We'll give you 5 minutes for your opening statement.
There we go. My name is Byron Lewis, Chief Lee Okanagan Band, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm sitting in Seal territory in the province of British Columbia. And I'm not going to be covering the same ground as what was actually spoken earlier on about that, but I'd like to really talk about the actual core and foundation if we are talking about restitution of land to First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. You know, are we also talking about the whole issue of reconciliation? And the views that we take on reconciliation is the definition where it talks about reconciliation being the resumption of good behavior or good relations after a period of hostility. And I think that really defines what our relationship has been for the longest period of time. So my question is how do we get beyond that? And I think when we go back into there, we really need to look at what is the foundation. And a lot of people don't recognize the fact. And I would ask, the panelists to have some of this research to be done. And in particular, it goes back to about 1537 with the signing of the Sublimis Dies or Sublimis Die by Pope Paul III, and again in 1537. What this document, why this document is important, was about 45 years after Columbus had touched foot in Hispaniola, and about 16 years after Cortez came ashore in 1519. But what it recognized that we are in fact human beings, that not only were we human beings and not beasts, but we're also recognized that, as being rational human beings, we're also had the right to be not to be deprived of our liberty or possession. Now, it is a document of colonization, but it recognizes at that point that we were, in fact, human beings. And you go into some of the other that establishes the relationship that exists between First Nations or Indigenous peoples and, and government, or the Crown, if you want to call that. You go into, 1704, Mohicans versus Connecticut. And that is very interesting because it talks about, and that's the earliest case of taking forward a case of for land tenure and also of management and control. And then you go, of course, we know about the Royal Proclamation 1763, but also, most importantly, one of the outcomes later in 1814 was the signing of the Treaty of Ghent, Article 9, that talked about the resumption of our full rights that were held prior to the hostilities in 1811. Well, when we talk about those rights, we're talking about the full rights. We express those rights through trade. We express those rights through interaction and engagement with government. We express that in in diplomacy with our neighbors and with newcomers that came in. And when you look at these systems, and we're still talking about the issue of not only recognition but the relationship that actually existed. And you go into, British Columbia joining Confederation in 1871. In that articles, British Columbia said that responsibility for Indians and lands reserved for Indians was a responsibility of the Dominion of Canada. But it also had, it had recognized also, and I'll quickly read this to you, is the charge of the Indians and trusteeship and management of the lands reserved for their use and benefit shall be assumed by the Dominion government, and a policy as liberal as that hitherto pursued by British Columbia government shall be continued by the Dominion government after the Union. Now, why this is important, if you actually, in the policy that exists underneath there, it's to carry out such policies. Tracts of land of such extent has hitherto been the practice of the British Columbia government to appropriate for this purpose, shall from time to time, and this is very important, is to be conveyed by the local government, which is a province, to the Dominion of Canada, and trust for the use and benefit of Indians on application of the Dominion of government. In the case of disagreement between the two governments respecting the quality of such land, so be granted, the matter shall be referred to the decision of the Secretary of State for the Colonies. This is one of the highest levels in colonial government. But why is this important? Because one, it actually shows that for us in British Columbia, that that responsibility for us and our lands is with the Dominion and not with the province. And that the conveyance of land from time to time, to us, is that lands were never considered static. That reserves are supposed to be under review to look at size and look at, demographics and others, and be adjusted from time to time.
Chief Lewis, I'm going to just jump in briefly. We're at the 5 minutes, so I'll give you a second or a bit of time if you want to just wrap up your comments for your opening statement, and then we'll get into the comments.
I'll do that really fast.
Yeah, thank
you. And one of the issues of that is that for us that this review had happened in the Joint Commissions and also with McKenna McBride, but it also, and I want people to look at the BC Indian Mineral Resources Act of 1943. This act is a prime example of colonialism at its finest. And I can explain that if people want to ask. But what I'm talking about is the relationship. How do we get to that good relationship?
Great. Thank you so much. And I apologize for cutting you off. The 5 minutes is a very tight amount of time, so really appreciate it. We'll go now to Ms. Mitchell. And when you're ready, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Ani, Patricia Mitchell, Indigenous cause. Treaty 1, Shiga Treaty 5, Nidonji. Niji Kingdom, Amaya Matabiyan. She, Ginon, trying to talk my language. It's very emotional because it was forced from me, but I'm going to try and use it when I can. And basically, I wanted to say that I'm very glad to be here today. I work with an organization that's been around since 1994, and it's only within the last 5-6 years that the federal government allowed for an actual physical office to be created. And we're situated in one of the urban reserves in Manitoba. It's the Peguis Indian Reserve in downtown Winnipeg. Some of the work that our office does, we actually work with First Nations in terms of adding land using the ATR policy and creating new reserves, similar to the Peguis Indian Reserve, Long Plain Indian Reserve, Swan Lake. And I'm very proud to say that it's part of our team that are actually in the background doing that work. Just today, one of the First Nations that we've been assisting was evacuated from their home community for over 10 years. And in fact, this First Nation has been struggling, like really struggling to try and add land to their community. And having to be evacuated from their lands, like completely decimated. They had no land, and it's just been very hard to try and work with them, to get the bureaucrats to basically just get off the way. It would be helpful if they just handed over the paperwork and let our office do the legwork, because I'm finding that's what's working for us. That's what's working for the First Nations, because we know what they're going through. We know the needs that the leadership and that their lands department need, and we're going out of our way to support them as they go and create more land, whether it's for economic development or residential. And right now we have about 12 First Nations that were involved with doing a special lands project, and it is a lot of work, but what I'm finding is that it's very beneficial when these urban reserves are being created, because it provides an economic opportunity, not only to the First Nations, but also to the municipalities or the cities or even the province in this situation, because it's increasing the economic benefits for those regions. And our office in building that relationship with some of these municipalities has not been easy. But I'm very proud to say that, since we've started acting almost as a liaison or a bridge, some of the leadership in these First Nations who've been stuck at tables for like 15 years are finally starting to see the benefit that it's in everybody's interest for them to work together. And in fact, some of them are talking about equity stake positions on a regional utility service. And that's a big deal for a First Nation in our region to be offered an equity stake or part ownership of a utility in Manitoba. And I'm not talking about the Crown Corporation. The Crown Corporation of Manitoba Hydro, that's owned by the province, has done a lot of damage to our First Nations, including mine. It's unfortunate that communities like mine who have lost, just under 900 acres of land, riverfront property, and right now that First Nation is not even on queue anywhere to get land added through the reserve process, the ATR process. To me, having riverfront property, even if you were to give them their land, it has to be more than that. It's only because we've hunted, we've trapped, and fished, and even our water, we can't even fish where we want to fish. Everything, there's no trespassing signs, private property that are coming up on trails that we use today. And it's difficult to see that. And it would be nice if the province would open up that door for us to settle these treaty land entitlements that are owed to many of our First Nations, because they're not. But they will definitely go out and lease, or they will go sell that land. And if they were to ever try settle all the TLE agreements in our region, there's not enough Crown land for them to do that. So my suggestion, and I've shared this with bureaucrats, I said there's got to be a different way for us to explore settling some of these land issues that are owed to our First Nations in our region. Whether it's giving them another, a building in downtown Winnipeg or Brandon or something, it has to be a different process because there's not enough land there.
Thank you for your opening comments and for sharing. We'll go next to Mr. El Hafez for 5 minutes. So whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Koi Kakina, I would first like to say miigwech, Standing Committee, for giving me the time and opportunity to share my thoughts on the extremely important topic of land restitution. I firmly believe that in the so-called era of reconciliation, the question of land, land ownership, jurisdiction, and resources is the most important question that needs to be resolved for our nations ever hope to coexist in peace and friendship. My name is Shadi Al-Hafez. I'm an Algonquin, Anishinabeg, and Syrian, and I'm a member of Kitigan Zibi Anishinabeg. I'm currently a PhD student at the University of Toronto in the Department of Sociology and hold a research fellow position with the Yellowhead Institute, which is an Indigenous-led think tank housed at Toronto Metropolitan University. It is fitting that I join this discussion today on my nation's unceded ancestral territory, lands that my ancestors never relinquished to Canada through any formal treaty mechanism or through any conflict. Despite this reality, Canada has chosen our lands as its capital and home for its national government. Although I'm not an official representative of my nation, it is only from my context as an Algonquin that I speak, and it is only to that context that I can speak. As a nation whose territory has slowly been occupied over time and who have experienced dispossession and removal from our lands and territories, the current mechanisms that exist to seek redress solidify that occupation. For my nation and for many other nations across this country, in order to get land back or cash back for lands taken, we have had to participate in outdated, costly, and excruciatingly long processes and mechanisms established with the intent of not providing restitution to First Nations, but to reconcile Canada's lack of true ownership over land, as highlighted through surrender clauses. The limitations of the specific and comprehensive claims processes are well documented, as are the challenges of pursuing title claims. This reinforces the notion that true restitution can only be accomplished through the co-development of mechanisms that actively place government and First Nations as equal partners in the development of a process that prioritizes restitution over reconciliation. For nations and communities that choose to assert their jurisdiction over land, with or without the support of their elected leadership, and outside of government-sanctioned processes, we see how Canada actively narrows the means by which we can access land. My nation, as other nations, have pursued assertion methods such as actively occupying our territories and asserting our rightful jurisdiction. In these circumstances, community members and elected leaders have been served injunctions, have been surveyed, arrested, and harassed by police, and have experienced racism and violence from Canadians. This reinforces the notion that there is only one acceptable way to seek restitution, and that is through government-developed and sanctioned processes alone.
Sorry, I'm going to pause just for a second. If you want to just slow down the pace a little bit so our translators can keep up.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. This makes me question the intentions of a nation that states that it wishes to reconcile, while the actions show that reconciliation can only take place on Canada's terms and conditions. Lastly, in the midst of a housing crisis and the rising cost of living in this country, I would like to address how for us who reside within our ancestral territory but away from our home communities and reserves, we are currently being priced out of our lands. For myself and my fellow community members, home ownership outside of our communities is not feasible. Knowing that, it is extremely difficult to see Canadians inherit wealth vis-a-vis land and property, knowing that those lands and the wealth transferred from them through inheritance was wrongfully acquired. For me, land restitution extends beyond the borders of my community and can be exemplified by my ability to acquire and own land as well as a home on my own territory. Utilize that land and property to generate wealth for my family and community, and ultimately be able to pass down my land and associated intergenerational wealth to my children, in the same manner that Canadians have been able to build their societies on our lands. This requires that we think outside of the box when it comes to developing tools and mechanisms to support the acquisition of land and property outside of the reserve. In the same manner that early settlers were given a boost to access wealth through our lands outside of traditional lending and mortgages, we should be exploring how to equitably offer home and land ownership opportunities to First Nations individuals throughout their entire territories, not just on reserve. Restitution also means addressing the current inequities that exist as a result of the wealth and sustainability offered to Canadians through settlement and occupation of our lands and territories. Miigwech for this opportunity to speak, and I look forward to any questions you might have. Miigwech.
Great, thank you for your comments. Okay, we have first round, we have Mr. Viersen, who will have 5 minutes. Whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks our witness for being here as well. Just was to the Yellowhead Institute, just your final comments there were very interesting around, you said around new ways of, I think you were referencing kind of like the homesteading process and things like that. Can you flesh that out, what if you have any ideas on alternative methods of reconnecting Indigenous people with their lands through something like that.
I do think there could be granting processes for down payments on homes or lands outside of a First Nation community for First Nation individuals from the territory. So as an example, I'll say right now, outside of my own home community, in order for me to be able to buy land or property in Ottawa, which is my unceded ancestral territory, for myself and most community members, that's completely out of reach given the socioeconomic conditions within our community. Most of us are born with a bad credit rating, so I mean, to be able to get a mortgage or a loan is quite difficult. So I think there needs to be processes in place or mechanisms in place to even the playing field, I think, a little bit when it comes to home ownership and land ownership outside of our First Nation communities. I think on reserve it's definitely important as well, but thinking outside of my community, I still live on my territory, but I can't afford to live on my territory.
There is like an endless amount of crown land in this country. What do you have any thoughts around maybe reigniting the homesteading or claims process in that respect, dedicated to First Nation people?
Yeah, definitely. I do think that I hold the position that Crown lands that are not currently being utilized, and I'll maybe pinpoint provincial parks and nature reserves, such as the ones very close to Ottawa, those can definitely be returned to Algonquin community members and nations, and the land can be utilized in the way that those communities see fit.
One of the challenges that we've had as a country kind of across the board is around identification of who is a community member. And that always is going to be, how does your community identify who is a community member?
We don't. Cernak tells us who our community members are.
Yeah, so that you can see how that's a challenge.
I mean, we do. We identify. We know who we are, but our membership is controlled by Cernak. Currently, we don't have a membership law in Kiliganzivi.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. There's been discussions around like an Indigenous development bank. Any thoughts on that?
I think any mechanism for Indigenous people to be able to access capital outside of the traditional institutions is beneficial for our communities. I think there's a lot of barriers that exist when it comes to Indigenous people in the traditional finance system, and I think creating Indigenous-owned systems such as the one you mentioned. I know that there's other organizations in the city here that are involved, such as NACA, that are creating investment opportunities for Indigenous people. I think those are great options.
NACA, can you explain that a little bit?
It's the National Aboriginal Capital Corporations Association.
Okay. Okay. Is there any one of these organizations that I wouldn't be aware of that you think you should highlight for us?
Off the top of my head,
no.
At the moment.
Patricia? Any so there's discussions around like an Indigenous development bank needed. You got anybody you could point to say this is the guy that we got to talk to about something like that, or here's a group that's doing something interesting around that?
I think the newly created corporation, the First Nation Finance Authority, I think they're called, or the Financial Management Board. That's something that's been creative, and it is helping a lot of First Nations. I mean, they're finding there are some issues with it, but it's somewhere to start, right? And it'll give them support, that financial support.
Chief Louis, just around Indigenous Development Bank and that idea, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I do. If you look at some of the, what, some of the First Nations has actually done with trust money or things that are monies generated from on reserve resources, you have to, look no further than Peace Hills Trust. Started out with, I think, around 196 million. Today, that bank is worth over just shy of $1 billion. You look over in British Columbia where the provincial government and with First Nations established about $100 million trust, and I sat on that for a number of years. And that one generates, based upon about $100 million, with the interest being generated a little less than 6%. And if you look at some of the settlements coming out of land claims, that these types of institutes are very much a solution to a lot of problems. You could actually look at some that could be providing mortgages or underwriting mortgages to its members, or looking at the investment into economic development. So there's a lot of solutions that are available, but I think that's where, what I talked earlier about, but the need of having partnerships and support from federal governments to actually do this, and resource development, especially in the province of British Columbia or across Canada, you're going to see First Nations and Indigenous peoples being front and center in those types of initiatives.
And just for the record, I said 5 minutes, but I corrected it and gave you 6 because this first round is 6 minutes. So my apologies, but you got your full time there. Next, we have Mr. McLeod for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the presenters today. I appreciate the information that you're sharing with us. I belong to the Dehcho First Nations, which represents both the Dene and the Métis in the region that I live in. And we've been trying to sort out land tenure and self-governance since the 1970s. And it's still a challenge. It seems like a lot of times we're not talking the same language. When we talk about land, we talk about large tracts of land that moose and caribou can roam freely and can survive, and there's enough food and enough trees and plants and everything else so that we can also continue to practice a sustainable way of life. And we need our waters clean and pure so that the fish can survive. When we talk about land here in Ottawa, people have a tendency to say, well, how many properties do you need? How much is it worth anyway? So it's difficult and really challenging because it's like I said, sometimes we're looking at the same thing, but it's interpreted different. And I hear on a constant, fairly constantly, about some of the policies that are still in place that are very colonial. We've entered an era of reconciliation. A lot of things are being discussed. A lot of things are moving forward. But there is still certain policies that are very dated. The comprehensive claim policy, I think, is one that I hear the most about, that it stops and slows down negotiations because of the cede and surrender clause. I wonder if if all of you can provide your comments on some of these policies, especially the comprehensive claim policy. Does it need to be replaced in the spirit of reconciliation? And maybe just let's start with that. You can go ahead.
I would say the comprehensive claims policy does need to be replaced with something that is co-developed with First Nations on an equal footing. I think the process needs to be guided by both parties equally, and it doesn't need to be dictated by one party to another. If you want to seek redress for your lands, this is the process that you have to do. Instead, I think the process needs to be negotiated fully as equal partners. I do think the cede and surrender clause is a significant issue with comprehensive land claims. I know with my own community, when we signed a global settlement, that was a big divisive issue for the community, and there was a lot of ambiguities around that clause. I think another issue with those claims is the I can't remember the exact clause itself, but not being able to pursue further claims after the claim is settled. So if something comes up later on, you find out and you want to pursue that claim, you can't if it's related to that original claim. And so I think that's also an issue within those. And it's just an outdated process. I mean, we've been using the same comprehensive claims now since the James Bay Agreement, and I think it's time to update that process.
Chief Lewis, it's going over to you. You have your hand up, so please feel free to weigh in.
Okay. Yeah, I would say that yes, it needs to be looked at and revamped. And when in British Columbia, when you're talking about the province, it's a majority of it is unceded. So there's the option. One is to negotiate through the BC treaty process, which our people are adamantly opposed to, and the other one is seeking a declaration of title is always an option. And there seems to be no middle ground between one or either end of the extremes. And part of that is that a lot of our people do not feel that why should we actually give up ownership of our territories in order to get a fair and just settlement? That should not be a prerequisite of any agreement. And if we're talking about reconciliation, why does it have to be that way? You look at hydro production in our territories, and 56% of all hydro produced in the province of British Columbia comes from our territory. And it's destroyed our fisheries, it's destroyed habitat and all other things, and yet there's not even looking at the sharing of revenues on there. So what other options do we have, except taking the most adverse approach? Because there's been never any attempt to actually sit down and treat us as partners. And that's why I went and brought up, such things as sublimis die and the whole process going through there, that we are in fact human.
I was going to ask the question about working together. We heard from the previous presenters that it was difficult to have municipal and provincial, territorial, federal, and Indigenous governments work together to try to resolve these issues. And maybe a quick comment from the chief.
We're working fairly well with a lot of municipal and regional governments, and but there's still this whole issue, and about looking at legislation like for such issues. What you brought up about resources and what we call venture capital. I mean, our natural capital. That's salmon. That's all the other things are found in nature that we're dependent on. And now we got about 90, anywhere from 85 to 90% of our territories that are impacted, and that is no longer possible. Now we're suffering through diabetes and others, but a lot of municipalities are basically some of the causes of those declines. So how do we actually work with this? I think there needs to be a different type of arrangement that more or less that mitigates some of these impacts, because you're looking at our inability to actually feed ourselves. And that's been, we have the lowest common denominator in terms of wages, in terms of families, but yet we're able to be quite healthy. The only reason why it was our traditional foods. Now they're gone and we still have the lowest wages. It's a real problem.
Okay, we're going to stop there, and next we're going to go to Madame Berube, who you'll have 6 minutes for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question will be for Chief Louis. After 6 consecutive mandates, how did you view the situation evolve, and what deficiencies are there in the federal government that you've been seeing for a long time?
I'm going to need more than 5 minutes. And when you look at that, I think one of the biggest is, government, when they look at such, development of such things as socioeconomic analysis, they don't really show what the impacts are on reserve. They don't actually show, conclusively what actually is the social problems or others. They might highlight them, but it doesn't actually go down into policy that you have funding formulas that are based upon. You look at drug and alcohol, and they say, that's in high numbers. But statistically, First Nations are consume less alcohol than basically the general public. And those who do drink, it's at a lower level. The ones we have is the chronic. But if you look at the people that are chronic dependencies, what are those? Are those people self-medicating from all the other effects like residential schools, 60 scoops, all these other factors? Then you look at our inability to actually address our own issues through access of our resources, and then we don't have that. Then we're dependent on the government, that you have a provincial government that views the federal government of having resources for all their problems. That is not the fact. It's formula driven, and those formula driven, the formulas are not adequate or even based on true facts and figures of the socioeconomic conditions on reserve. Like the chief in Attawapiskat once said, and she pointed towards the resources behind her community. We have everything we need to fix our problems. It's the same thing here. It's access to resources to where we can actually fix our own problems. That is the problem.
In the framework of truth and reconciliation and reinforcement, do you have anything that could give us any idea of restoration of lands in this context?
Yeah, I really do believe that government and First Nations really sit down and have the discussion what I described earlier on, to where we're both equal partners and sitting at the table, and then we start discussing what the issues are. You look internationally in places like Pakistan and others where these small communities are actually looked at, where they're approached using the multi-input area development, which means you're not just asking NRCan to come in there to look at how you can develop a sustainable community. You're bringing in NRCan, you're bringing in ISK, you're bringing in provincial authorities, that each one of their mandates are able to tackle a particular problem that exists within those communities. It's not like just coming out there and saying, oh, well, I'm a representative from a mining sector and I'd like to build you the school. Well, maybe the school isn't the problem. It could be having access to foods through food security. That could be the problem. But you need to be able to let First Nations describe what their problems are, then to build this solution from there. And multi-input area development is one solution. Some people call it public-private community partnerships. We need to look at a different model. We need to look at how we can actually come together and use limited sources that are out there to create a solution, which is about sustainable communities that could be part of our culture, which includes our what we call our natural capital, access to ungulates, access to fish, access to wild game, access to others, along with, contributions and other accesses to our resources. So we are able to actually develop a sustainable community. And I think quickly, I'll just describe to you, you look at the whole population of Canada lives within about 150 kilometers from the Canada-US border. Who is it that lives in that middle point? Well, it's First Nations and other people. And this is the area that's being developed. Have you developed a workforce that can actually sustain the type of development that's being proposed? No, because you haven't taken that step. Government's been concentrating on getting them off reserve, out of their communities, back south, and now they don't have a workforce to take advantage of what's there. We really need to flip this over and look at a new model of doing things.
Very quickly, Ms. Mitchell. We talk a lot about federal bureaucracy. Could you give us more details about communities that need processes to advance rapidly?
I was speaking about a First Nation that was evacuated for over 10 years and their kids were being raised in hotels. Just today, we actually had a community meeting that was held to try and update them on the process of converting that land that the region gave them funding already. There's been funding set aside for the infrastructure, and then it's the region that's holding up the paperwork. It's such minor things. One letter For example, this First Nation was waiting 20 years to convert some parcels of land. When we came into the picture, we were told it was just a typo on a piece of paper that was holding up that ATR. And it's crazy that that type of bureaucracy is what's preventing these communities from developing. And this particular leadership, they, having been evacuated from their entire community, when they were trying to go back home, they weren't even allowed to select the land. Instead, it was the province that said, no, we're going to put you over here. And now they're going back to an area that's not their original reserve. The province has dictated to them, and ISK, on the other hand, is saying, if you don't sign this comprehensive agreement, we're going to stall it. And that's what's happening. And I thought, how can the region, on one hand, give this First Nation several $100,000s to go develop, and then the ATR unit over here is saying, well, no, you got to do, A to Z first. And it just doesn't make any sense. And here we are, we took them to meet with the municipality, did their applications, even worked with the municipality and tried to make sure that the right parcels are being discussed. The bureaucrats come back to us and say, oh, you forgot this. And I thought, you know what, we've been going at this for a year already, and how many times have you gone through this process, and you're only telling us now, a year later, that maybe we needed an additional letter? Like, it's so ineffective. Whereas us, if they would just say, here, go do it. And then, we give the paperwork back to Ottawa, and whoever signs it, signs it. But it's stalled. It's stalled at that region, and I don't know why. Like, Manitoba is just, it's frustrating. It's a frustrating process having to deal with that region.
Okay, I'm going to have to stop there, and we have Ms. Idlud, who still has 6 minutes, so the floor is yours.
Thank you. First, Patricia, I want to encourage you, and I respect you because you are trying to use your mother tongue. If we are going to revitalize our languages, the only way we can do that is to have other people, other nations hear us speak our language. Don't give up. Just keep going. I encourage you to keep striving forward because I am proud to be able to use my own language while I'm here. And next time when you come here again, if you were to come here again, you can request to use an interpreter. To Chief Louis, I want to ask you about reconciliation. Pertaining to restitution of lands. To get land when we're working with governments to have lands restituted to First Nations and Indigenous peoples, there are ways that we can work closer and better together, but there are always barriers and always hindrances. Now, you have stated that. Can you elaborate more on your vision of new ways to work on restitution of land to Indigenous peoples and to work towards reconciliation? Thank you.
For that opportunity. I think, when I look at, these types of issues, I really have to go back and looking at what the Supreme Court said as on a on a basis of, what is that community? And what I mean by this is you look at, if you're an urban reserve or close to an urban setting, the ability to actually have land, put aside or returned to reserve land is very limited. And you go into places like Vancouver or anything like that, where just a small house lot is worth over $1 million. It's very hard to actually look at the ability. So, what are the other benefits that could be used to mitigate, such things as, lack of a land base? It could be in terms of economic development, a share of resources, or looking at, fisheries or other things that could be actually utilized. And if you're further, in the interior or others, it's the agricultural land base, or it could be fisheries, or it could be forestry. But it's got to be specific, and it's got to be driven by the people that live on that, in that land, and what they actually need. And in certain instances where you look at it, it may not be something that you can solve with money, because we need our traditional foods. Like us, it's a majority of us is protein diets. What do we have on the table? Carbohydrates, and what's the ramifications of that? Diabetes, heart disease, different types of cancers. So it's not just, the ability to say, here, have some money. And money's nice, but you can't eat it, and what our old people used to say. But we need to look at solutions that are from the community, by the community, and it's got to be a partner on the other side of that table, which is the federal and the provincial governments, and looking at how you can identify solutions. If it has to deal with resources, what is the problem? If it's fisheries, provide the means to actually increase the volumes. If it happens to be access to resources, increase the share that goes there for these First Nations to build houses or others. And when mining and everything comes in there, because you're having critical mines as being the primary focus, and not only in Canada, but especially the United States, what are they going to do for the Indigenous people that are living there? It's got to be based upon sustainable communities and how we're going to develop them. So, what I don't see is one size fits all. I see a community-based solution by the people, for their people, and them developing it, but also in partnership with government, where they provide them with the technical and policy support to achieve that. Because you look at residential schools, 60 Scoop, you're asking people to become parents again. And I always tell people, being a parent is not by instinct, it's a learned behavior. What happens when you take that away?
That takes us to the end of the first round. We're within about 4 minutes of running out of time. We had 2 hours from the time we started, so we're going to have to end it here. So I'd like to thank our panel for the second hour so much for joining us today. Really appreciate you being here. And for our members, you'll see a notice of meeting in the next 24 hours or so to prepare you for Thursday. In the meantime, there was one thing, very important piece of business. The former chair is holding an event right now with Inspire in support of Indigenous students, and it's happening from 5:30 to 7:30 tonight in room 8 on 131 Queen, but is it 853 or B53? 853? Okay, I can't, mine's blurry. So if anybody has time to go by there, please feel free to. And with that, we're adjourned.